Well, hello, this is Pastor Matthew Woods from Grace Lutheran Church in New Albany, Indiana, and this is the weekly devotion for May 29, 2023. Today's title, 10 Chapters. Well, today is Memorial Day, and most of us relax and take a breath from the fast pace of the usual things, I first want to give thanks and honor our fallen. May we always be grateful for those hard-fought sacrifices of those who gave their fullest measure of devotion to our country. Such dedication has literally made it possible for the rest of us to peaceably sit on the back porches or spend time on the lake or just enjoy the day off. May we at least remember to show some gratitude this week to a veteran, to honor those who have fallen in service to our nation. At least we can do that. Thank you to all who have honorably served our country, and thank you to those families who have dedicated their lives to the military service of our country. Related to this, I think of those who lead our country. I have a reading from 1 Kings chapters 1 through 11, actually, about the reign of Solomon. Just looked at that again this week. Talk about a guy who had it all, right? We're told in 1 Kings chapter 3 that God appeared to Solomon and said to him, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." Wouldn't that be something? Solomon responded, "Give me wisdom and knowledge that I may lead this people, for who is able to govern this great people of yours?" God says to Solomon that since he did not ask for wealth or honor or power, but for wisdom and knowledge to govern my people over whom I've made you king, therefore wisdom and knowledge will be given you. God also gave Solomon the wealth he didn't ask for and all the prestige that went with that. God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding beyond measure and the breadth of mind like the sand on the seashore. 1 Kings 4:29. No one had such wisdom before or after Solomon. Solomon's reputation preceded him as he was visited by kings and queens from all over the world just to hear him express that wisdom. 1 Kings chapter 4:33 tells us that he was wise about plants and animals. He was good with all sorts of math and weights and measurements and large projects as evidence in all the building he did. He was a shrewd interpreter of the law as demonstrated in 1 Kings chapter 3 and dealing with the two prostitutes who were fighting over a baby. Perhaps Solomon began his role by modeling himself after Nathan, who sought the wisdom from God. Solomon seemed to be the ideal ruler for the time. He had peace on all sides, it says, of his enormous kingdom, and Judah and Israel lived in safety. 1 Kings chapter 4. Most famously is the visit by the Queen of Sheba in 1 Kings chapter 10. She comes to visit with a huge number of gifts, including 4 tons of gold, huge loads of expensive spices, and precious jewels besides. She came with questions, none of which were too hard for Solomon to answer, we're told. But I note her observations about the state of the nation at that time. And we kind of get a sense that this was the peak. 1 Kings chapter 10, verses 4 and following tells us, "When the queen of Sheba saw all the wisdom of Solomon and the palace he had built, the food on his table, the seating of his officials, the attending servants in their robes, his cupbearers, and the burnt offerings he made at the temple of the Lord, she was overwhelmed. In wisdom and wealth you have far exceeded the report I have heard. How happy your people must be, how happy your officials who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom. Praise to the Lord your God, who has delighted you and placed you on the throne of Israel. Because of the Lord's eternal love for Israel, he has made you king to maintain justice and righteousness." That was great. Chapter 10 was the height of things. But then comes chapter 11. Solomon chases after foreign wives, and we're told his heart is turned away from the Lord. For 10 chapters, Solomon is a godly leader. But 1 Kings 1 through 10 is mostly highlighting God's gifts and what can happen when godly wisdom is applied to a nation. It's meant to highlight the Lord, not really King Solomon. But chapter 11 shows us what happens when wisdom is ruined by sin, and it always is. As long as Solomon was pursuing the Lord, the kingdom knew peace and prosperity. Once Solomon gave his heart to the foreign women and their idols, the fall of the nation became inevitable. What was the difference in chapter 11? Say, different from chapter 3? My guess in part is that Nathan may have died. Godliness certainly defined Solomon in the earliest days, and I would attribute that to Nathan. However, in the latter days of Solomon, his wisdom seems to go to his head. His priorities change and he fails in radical ways. What's more, the peace and prosperity that he worked so hard to build crumbles, and the nation is divided, and literally it all goes away with the next generation. As leaders go, so goes a nation. So how's it going today? We have a system of government unlike anything in history. Our nation's founders were wise in their understanding and in the way they wrote the Constitution. But I think they were naive in that they failed to put term limits into the order of things. So today we have career politicians and leaders who, when they started, may have intended good things for their service. However, the enticements of power have taken hold of most of them, as they did with Solomon. And so there is corruption. For 10 chapters, we as a nation have prospered. We have defeated tyrants in Europe and have gone to the moon even. For 10 chapters, the world has come to us, seeking wisdom, seeking help, and singing our praises. For 10 chapters, we boldly stood on the ideas like "In God We Trust" and quoted Genesis 1 from space. For 10 chapters, we have prospered and have access to incredible things today. But now most of us realize we are in chapter 11. Hearts have turned away from the Lord, just as it happened to do in Solomon's time. Chapter 11 is a sad chapter in 1 Kings, as one considers all that was promoted as wisdom. All that is promoted as wisdom today, all false. The debt ceiling is a prime example. How many times we've done this? If by ceiling they mean an open roof in a football stadium, then what's the point of a ceiling at all? A nation can get pretty used to living like Solomon in all of his splendor. And then who wants to give that up? If the good that God provides becomes the focus of our heart, then the nation will become divided, and it has. Then eventually the fall seems inevitable. We will fall to our enemies. What's more is that it only takes one chapter, you notice, to ruin the first 10. And the chapters that come after chapter 11 hold much heartache for Israel, but not all of them. Hidden within the brokenness of Israel remains the promise of Jesus. Within those many chapters is something much more valuable. The line of David does not just give us Solomon, does it? Something much more lasting remains within that bloodline. It goes back to the days of 1 Samuel chapter 7, where the Lord promises that one will sit on David's throne forever. Jesus is that one. Jesus is the source of all wisdom. He is the true wisdom. As great as Solomon was, Jesus is far greater. He is the author of wisdom. He invented science. Enemies do not make him nervous. Gold holds no value to him. He created all gold. And yet he holds all power and authority and has chosen to give his life, the ultimate sacrifice, for our salvation. That, my friends, is worth remembering, even in the midst of chapter 11, a world bankrupt of moral values. And yes, as leaders go, so goes the nation. so go the citizens of heaven. The faithful believer, the true follower of Jesus, the obedient child of God, the beloved of Jesus, so go God's people. Where he goes, we go. In him, no more chapters need to be written. No one has fought for us more than Jesus, and no one has given us more than Jesus. Freedom from sin is certain. From all of our enemies we are set free, and all of those enemies are put under his feet. And thankfully, in Jesus' case, he has no term limits. That is good. Therefore, I would encourage you to put your faith in Jesus and to trust in him even now. I also encourage you to pray for repentance, not just for leaders, but also for ourselves. We, the people, are also responsible as any, for the well-being of our nation and our communities. Finally, I pray that we would never forget the sacrifices that have made it possible for all that we have. A nation cannot survive, let alone thrive, without safety, law, or order. The best way to honor the fallen, and I would even put it in first responders in that regard, the best way to honor the fallen is to honor them with godly wisdom, to be godly citizens, and to provide godly service to one another. In this way, their sacrifice was not in vain. The true success in the first 10 chapters, my friends, was in the Lord, not in Solomon's wisdom. That wisdom still applies today. It's still true today. Applying God's wisdom is the way we know God's grace and God's way. May the Lord give us faith and courage to apply godly wisdom in our own lives, no matter what chapter our nation may be in. Well, thanks for joining us. I appreciate you being with me today. I always enjoy these moments to be with you, and I pray that you have a blessed week, good Memorial Day, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Monday. Take care now, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.